crypto or blockchain, right? It raised a lot of fundamental questions around money. CEOs of companies with 30 years, 40 years, and they were discussing the next investment option for them. We had a lot of people coming to us complaining when things went south. जो भागना नहीं चाहता उसे आप दौड़ा नहीं सकते.
Startup versus corporate job.
The IMPS could have been the next UPI, but it always felt it had to become a better NEFT.
Right. Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast by Cashvisory. I'm Utkarsh, the co-founder, and our mission is to bring every single fresh graduate to their first investment. I have a very special guest with me here today. We have Ram, who's the co-founder and CEO of AssetWorks. He's actually a marketing maverick who's headed marketing for companies like Coin DCX and Tap Invest. So amazing to have you on board today, Ram.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. So Ram, your journey has been pretty phenomenal so far, right? With acting as CMO for these companies that have gone from their journey of 10 to 100 to even 200. So tell me more about how your career initially started, and because I believe you studied engineering.
Yeah, so I'll give you some background about me, right? I'm a Tamilian from Kerala who was born and brought up in Gujarat.
Right.
So I've stayed almost 18-20 years there, and I picked up a lot of things around business. All my friends, all my schoolmates, my neighbors, in some form of the other were in business.
Right.
And I come from a completely non-business family. So since school, it was very clear for me that I have to be on the business side of things. And I always itched to start something of my own.
Right.
While in engineering, I did start something. It was more around event management for colleges. Post 2 years of running that in college, I realized that I had no clue how to run a business.
Right.
And I moved out. We had to unfortunately close that down. But I had an engineering degree, so I worked in a software firm for a couple of years. I have been coding since the age of 9, so that's...
Oh, interesting.
I'm a marketeer who loves to code.
Right.
So along the journey, I did my MBA, went into traditional like corporates. Like I worked for Cipla, Coca-Cola. I worked for a couple of other consultancies and so on. And yet again, I decided that, I always wanted to start up. That's what my goal was.
Right.
And that's when a friend of mine and we both decided to start an event management company. An artist management company. We moved from event management to artist management. It was called Big My Gig those days, and it was a place where you could book a juggler, joker, singer, actor, whoever for any of your events.
Very interesting.
Ran that for around 2.5, 3 years. Unfortunately, we were hit bad by demonetization.
Right.
Because a lot of our business still used to happen in cash. Or the end payments used to happen in cash, and that was a time when a lot of projects got cancelled and stuff that happened. Luckily for us, we were able to pivot and start a agency which was into brand management and marketing.
Right.
And that's where we worked with a lot of fintechs. And I still remember I got a call from Sumit, who was the co-founder of Coin DCX. And honestly, I still felt that it was a prospective client.
Right.
And we were probably going to pitch him the services for my agency. But after almost spending half a day at their office, I was very sure that this is what I wanted to do next. It was an industry that was just peaking.
Right.
It was a challenge worth solving, because everyone I spoke to that night told me don't do it.
Right.
And I was like, okay, if everyone hates it, then we need to figure out why and how can I solve it.
Right.
4 years at Coin DCX, saw the journey from one table to now. By the time I'd left, 3 offices,
Right.
700 odd people, company valued over 2 billion. Crazy journey, some amazing campaigns, some a lot of education, a lot of literacy on crypto front.
Right.
And the day I moved out because I felt that there was a lot more that I can be doing, and I always wanted to start.
Right.
That's when I was trying to figure out what next, and Abhinav, right, the one who made it possible for us today.
Yeah.
He introduced me to Tap Invest. He was talking about the beautiful stuff the people there were doing. Again, led marketing for them, helped them rebrand. So they were earlier called something else, rebrand into something new, launch a couple of other brands. But then, yeah, again, the whole idea came back that I wanted to do something of my own.
Right.
And that's where AssetWorks came in, where it was a very, very simple thing that I wanted to solve for. Investors are looking for ways to do their research. And we found out research analysis is pretty much broken. It is fragmented, it is limited, and it's not easy for someone to understand how to go about investing.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's where actually the both of us also resonate.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we wanted to solve, a content-based approach which can help investors find their next investment.
Right.
So that's where we are.
Amazing. And the problem that you're trying to solve is really real, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, we resonate with this problem because we are working on something similar, which is it's not that people don't have money, it's that they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And once you go out there, the maze of information is so confusing to everyone, right? So really noble. We'll come back to this and dive deeper, right? But let's go back to the very beginning. Because you mentioned that you always had this motivation that you want to do your own thing and work on your own business and company. What was it that sort of drove that? Was it something that came intrinsically to you? Was it something which was kind of a rebellion in your family because it wasn't traditionally done?
So honestly, I'm if I look back at my personal life, I'm somewhat of an opposite of a rebel. Right? I'm someone who is very, very compliant. I still remember my like everyone's parents would tell their child that don't eat outside, don't talk to strangers. I actually followed it to the T. Right. But I also somewhere felt that I could do a lot more, and probably it started with the whole idea that I was not cut out doing the traditional.
Right.
I used to get bored very easily doing the regular 9 to 5, and I always felt that I could do a lot more.
Right.
I was given this this nickname by some of my friends in college. Came around the launch of the first Robo movie. I was called Chitty.
Right.
Because I could do things very fast. I remember I wrote exams in 3-hour exam in 2 hours.
Right.
So I personally felt that I could do a lot more, and it was not from a disrespect of the traditional way of working. Right, I admired the kind of stuff that people are able to pull through.
Yeah.
I still believe the battles are won when things are going boring and slow. Right?
Yep. Agreed.
So it's not always the excitement. But then I also had seen, like I'd grown up, as I said, in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad, and everyone around me was in business, right? And I'd seen the kind of challenges that they had faced. I still remember one incident when our neighbor lost everything in business, and then in the next 1.5 years, his kids, his wife, his daughters, everyone worked very hard to come back, right? And I saw that transformation journey right in front of me. Right. So I loved the challenge, right? I loved the volatility. I loved the excitement about starting something of your own, which perhaps over the years has also translated. And I'll be honest about it. It probably started with the excitement, but has over the years translated in solving a problem.
Right.
Where it is mind-boggling that there are so many. So in case of, say, AssetWorks, right, there are so many people who want to invest, who have the ability to invest, but perhaps don't know what to do.
Exactly.
Right? And as an engineer, as a person within the startup ecosystem, I always felt like it's stupid if you don't build a product for this.
Absolutely.
Right? And it is unfair for the people out there. So I think I have changed. I have evolved. something that started with an excitement and something with by facing a challenge, to something which is now more about solving a core problem. I think I have seen myself changing that way, but I would attribute more to those pieces.
Got it, got it. No, that's super interesting, and the journey that you've had, I think, sort of encapsulates where you stand today. And a few things that I can relate to there is that the fact that it changes from a motivation of, let's say, wanting to earn a lot of money, or just wanting to do something that's exciting and build something new, to actually becoming a mission. And I think that's where it becomes the most powerful. Because if you're working towards a mission to solve a real problem, it adds so much meaning that keeps you going, that wakes you up in the morning. And likewise, even with us, we believe that what we are doing is truly going to benefit every single investor, right? So that is amazing, and I totally have that in common with you. But do tell me more about the various kinds of jobs that you did, because I understand that you worked in a traditional corporate job, you worked in startups, you also did your own thing. So how has this sort of enriched your overall career so far? And do you think it's important for people to get exposed to both sides of the table?
Definitely. See, people should think of starting up. This is something that I have maintained since 2008. Okay, 2008, 2006 actually. When
Right.
so 2006 is when I was first year engineering, right? Maybe I'm too old right now to for that part. But 2006 was my first year engineering, and that's the first time I saw an entrepreneurship cell
Right.
being opened up in the college, right? From that day onwards, I was very, very mesmerized with the whole idea of starting. And I believe that people should start up. And I've seen a big transformation with people who have done something within a startup ecosystem.
Right.
You get to learn a lot about various skills, about various things across, but you get to learn a lot about yourself.
Right.
Right, and that's something I truly believe people should think of starting off, even if it's a small a side venture that you're doing, right? You're probably selling, and I always tell my wife, she makes bakes beautiful cakes. I say, why don't you go ahead and start your small baking firm, right? The whole idea is you try to understand how money flows in, how an ecosystem works.
Right.
You get to know the real world challenges. So I do believe starting up is important. But I also believe working in a corporate gives you another advantage. So the starting up or the entrepreneur journey is very volatile.
Yep.
Right? It is very spread out. And many a times you don't go deep into anything.
Right.
You're so spread out that upar se you know every stuff, right? Completely at a surface level for a lot of things. But when you go into corporate life, you probably just go deep into one thing, right? You learn about processes, you learn about working in large teams, you get to understand how you are that small cog in the entire ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And you work with some amazing people also out there. So I would say it's important that you work across. If you're fortunate enough to start something of your own, it's great. If not, try to join a young startup. And again, I truly believe that at the start of your career, perhaps you can think of a startup, right? You have very little to lose.
Right.
You can take up some risks. Again, it depends on your entire financial situation as well. But try to take that exposure early on in life, because eventually after you reach a particular age, right, it'll be if you haven't found out your niche and moved or probably started on your own, it would be great that you're working in a large corporate, because you're learning those pieces as well. So that's something that I personally hold true. In multiple conversations with a lot of different people, I always urge them to start.
Yeah.
At least so that they fail, right? And that teaches you a lot.
Right. No, and that's amazing. And what I see a lot happening in the startup ecosystem, at least, is that people, to some degree, their biases where they look down upon a traditional corporate job.
Yeah.
Right. I am totally against that sort of thought process, because having worked in a corporate for about 3 to 4 years, I totally see the value of those processes and understand how things work at scale.
Yeah.
Because that is the aspiration. At the end of the day, every startup wants to become a corporation at the end of the day.
Definitely.
Right? Very glad with the fact that you had a very similar experience on that front as well. Now let's talk a bit about personal finance,
Sure.
because I know that that's a problem that you're trying to solve with your current venture. But how was it for you when you tried to get into it? Be it in college, after college, how were you introduced to the concept of money management, and how did you go about it as someone that young?
So money management was aligned with my startup journey. Yeah, because I have wanted to start off. Basically, I come from a family which is very traditional in sense, right? And we had no specific connection towards business.
Right.
So, uh, which meant that I was most likely on my own. I had full support from my folks. They were always there, and they always encouraged me.
Right.
But beyond a point in time, skill wise, they said yes. Obviously, we don't have much to offer, right? So I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own.
Right.
Running my own venture while in college. And failing at it taught me a lot about finance.
Right.
Okay, because simply put, right, we were getting some revenue, we were making some expense, but we never understood concepts like cash flow. We never understood what is actual profit,
Right.
right? How much money do we really are earning, right? So these things I learned it on a hard way, right? I understood that I was doing a lot of mistakes, right? Luckily, I had, again, my parents and my ecosystem was there who could probably guide me, especially on the traditional fronts.
Right.
So, like most of the folks, I started with banking products, be it FD, recurring deposit, personal provident fund, these kind of instruments. And luckily for me, my father by that time had also developed interest in stocks.
Okay. Great.
That's when the both of us started chatting about stocks. How do we invest in it? I opened a demat account, tried to understand how to look at markets. Obviously, I did not have the time to trade, but I understood the basics there. So pretty much slightly later down the line, all my needs to manage my own finances came because of the risks I was taking.
Right.
So when I went ahead and decided to start my second venture, I had to talk to my wife that, okay, now you have to take over, manage the household finances. I'm taking too many risks.
Right.
But we also ensured that we are having fun, we are enjoying ourselves, so that our journey doesn't seem like a burden.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It is a lot of pain, a lot of challenges as an entrepreneur that you face, especially at the start.
Yeah.
But then you need to enjoy life. You need to, and again, it was my passion, my dream. I did not want my wife to, not get her share of benefits and the joy in her life.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out ways, and one of the ways in which we could think of was to learn how to manage our funds much better.
Right.
I think that's where it came up. I think there was certain goal-based financing and stuff that also
Before it became mainstream, so to say.
I don't know when it became mainstream, but it felt very natural. I had a certain goal. I felt, okay, let's start saving for that goal or investing for that goal. And that's where I started moving from a savings mindset to an investing mindset. Because I realized that savings is not helping me reach my goal at a pace that I want.
Right.
Okay. And I'll have to take some risks. I was quick to understand that I'm taking big risks as an entrepreneur. Why shouldn't I also explore some risk-based investing options out there? And that's where I started exploring a couple of things, and went into. So I did explore a lot of products also because of the way we were managing financial companies.
Right.
So as a agency, we used to we worked for Nivesh.com, which was a UP Bihar based mutual fund company.
Right.
It's an AMFI registered product. And when we worked with the founders, we understood a lot about how their mindset is, and this I'm talking about 2014 or so.
Right.
When we got to understand how these people are working. We worked with a large broking agency. We worked with a very large advisory firm, the traditional advisory firm, right? And working with them and talking to their founders and their mindset, right? And we were brand people. We were trying to write communication for them. So we had to understand what these people are actually saying to their consumers. So through that journey, I think we got to learn a lot about investing in general. I think that helped explore newer investment options. And I distinctly remember one conversation where something similar, we were doing an event, and during lunch, we had a couple of other speakers on the table.
Right.
And some of them really like CEOs of companies with 30 years, 40 years. And they were discussing the next investment option for them.
Right.
And it was a very good insight for me to look at what people with 30, 40 years experience are thinking of. And the kind of investment options that they were looking at was probably a land parcel in Parghar in Mumbai versus buying a boiler plant somewhere. Right. To someone. And eventually what happened is there was this builder called Havre. The CEO of Havre convinced the other person that you should buy some JCB machines. And lease it out. Right.
Okay.
So asset leasing that way. And I was fascinated by the way people are thinking and how they're thinking about managing their money. And I felt I was just ticking boxes rather than actively looking at managing funds. And again, the entire Coin DCX journey opened up a plethora of new things that were out there. And how personal finance needs more options, needs more thought, and needs more active engagement, right? And I think the generation has moved like that, right? We are more of a DIY kind of a set of people, right? I still remember my father-in-law would probably go ahead and book a trip through a Kesari tour or something like that, whereas now we don't do any of those things, right? Why should finance be the same way, right?
Totally agree.
So a lot of self-control, and again, my journey is not at all an ideal way of finding it, but I hit, like any entrepreneurial journey, my personal finance journey has been a lot of hits and misses. Burnt fingers along the way, but understood how to handle some funds.
Got it.
I wouldn't still say that I'm even close to an expert, but at least I'm an informed investor. That's what I would probably close at.
Right. And I think that's the only thing that most of us need to strive for, right? Because that's not our primary job. And one important point that you talked about was how the dynamics have shifted from the previous generation. Previously, people mostly worked on relationship basis. If they know an advisor, if they know a distributor, they sort of come to your house, have tea and coffee with you, and sort of manage your portfolio at the same time. Now dynamics are really changing, right? So I think that's one trend that we spotted at our end as well, that people now don't want to be completely sort of rely on someone else, right? They do want handholding, they do want support, but they do want to feel empowered to make their own decisions, right? And that is precisely the problem that we are working on. I also want to, pick out some of the key things that you pointed out in your journey, which will definitely help out a lot of our viewers as well. So one thing that you did was that while you were in a risky venture, you wanted to make sure that your finances sort of cushion that. So risk management sort of comes into the picture there. And you also talked about how your wife was holding the fort down when you were doing a risky venture. So that's also pretty amazing to see how two people can work as a team and achieve the best outcome. Another thing, I'm very impressed by the fact that you did goal-based planning before the term was even probably coined, right? And finally, the last thing that you mentioned was you actually took an active interest in it. and you did your own research, you learnt about it, only then did you sort of get into it. I have a follow-up question there though, because the fact that you were interested was pretty unique. A lot of people are curious, but they are not interested enough to take that journey of researching themselves and learning about things themselves. So what would you recommend to someone young that's sort of also obviously growing your money is something that everyone would want to do, right? But they don't have enough time and bandwidth to go into the rigor of research that you did. How should they look at it, and how should they go about it?
There is one basic understanding, right? And I really like this line that one of my friends said, right? आप जो भागना नहीं चाहता उसे आप दौड़ा नहीं सकते.
Right. बिल्कुल.
So very simply put, right? Everyone wants to make money. Everyone wants to ensure that they are able to generate wealth, maybe generational wealth for themselves. But it is very, very obvious. Like for anything in life, you can't just wish for it to happen, right? You have to work for it to happen. And what products can do, or companies can do, startups can do, is help you in that journey.
Right.
But it's your work, it's your effort.
Absolutely.
Right? So people need to understand, like anything else, finance is, or personal finance in this particular context, is something that you'll have to work on.
Right.
However, I also completely agree that it's not everyone's cup of tea. Right? I always quote this, right? There was a period in 21, 22 when there was a lot of interest in making everyone a coder.
Yeah.
Right? And it became somewhat farcical after a point in time that everyone has to be a coder, and 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds are being taught, and coding should be part of the school curriculum and this and that. In a similar way, I think, and I would take it to some extent that I'm also responsible for it as a marketeer back at Coin DCX or Tap Invest. We always thought that we have to educate people and make them good at personal finance. Whereas the point was not that, right? We have to make people literate, not necessarily educated. Not everyone could become a financial expert, right?
Agreed.
And if we try to do that, that's perhaps a place where people probably get turned off and they move along saying, okay, this is not something that I'm interested in. Because you might be a very good designer, a good singer, you could be very good at your job. Okay. But when it comes to personal finance and you're being educated and you're being taught every time, and you start probably facing failure a lot more, you get very much demotivated. Right? But that's not the goal, right?
Right.
I have to remain fit. Okay, I have to remain healthy. That doesn't mean that I have to become a professional bodybuilder.
Agreed.
Right? There's a big difference between that.
Yeah.
So I think finance has to, or the financial education side of things has to move towards this direction, where you have to generate enough interest for people to manage their own finances. Again, it is an active job. It cannot be. So there are times when you have an expert who can do certain things better than you, and you need to hire that expert. But again, it shouldn't be let go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You cannot let go of your finances.
Right.
It is an important piece. Again, going back to the bodybuilder example, you can hire a trainer, but the trainer will not, or anything that the trainer does is not going to impact your health. You have to still go ahead and pick the weights and do the harder. Right?
Absolutely.
So getting a trainer, it's all about how important it is, how crucial it is for you. But it is something that has to be active.
Right.
But also not in this sense that you're trying to become an expert. Right. You're trying to your goal should be you're an informed investor. You know what's happening. You know what's right or wrong for yourself. And you even know, even if you're utilizing an expert on this case, like an advisor, you know what the questions to be asked.
Exactly.
Right. And you know what kind of how do you calculate your basic returns and so on and so forth. So that's where I feel personally I have been active, but I, as I said, when I say I'm active to understand what I need to do.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not necessarily active being an expert.
Right.
Okay. Maybe my journey is with an expert would have been with lesser mistakes.
Right.
Right. And that could be still desirable. Right. Um, but as I said, people should look at taking control of their finances, and like with anything, right? Be it health or be it finance,
Yeah.
it's good that you start early.
100%. 100%. And very, very important points here. I think one thing that I can totally relate to, because this is something that we do actively with every user, every client that we have, is that we tell them to sort of not take any of our recommendations with their eyes closed. We want them to question us. We want them to understand the rationale behind any recommendation, right? So that they totally understand where their money is going. Right. So I think that is one of the very important points that you made, which is you might not have to go the entire journey yourself. You might have support and help, but you should be able to understand what is good advice from bad advice. You should be able to sort of ask the right questions so that those answers come to you. So I'm very, very glad you talked about that. And for everyone watching, please do that. Doesn't matter who it is, even if you're getting advice from your parents or your friends, you need to ask the right question so that you understand what is going on.
It has to be a conscious choice.
It has to be, exactly. It can't be with eyes closed. So this is great, and let's go a bit deeper into something that you briefly touched upon, which is your Coin DCX experience, and then how it opened up a world to a lot of different assets for you, right? So tell me how that evolution has been for you, like, and based on that experience, what does your portfolio currently look like?
So Coin DCX, crypto or blockchain, right?
Yep.
It raised a lot of fundamental questions around money, around value,
Yeah.
around what is cash, what is spends, and so on and so forth, right? And what is trust?
Yeah.
So a lot of first principle fundamental questions that were asked, and I was very fortunate that I had a lot of people around me, be it people who reported to me, or be it the founders, or even being the customers around us. They were very clear on what blockchain is, what the money is, what finance is, how to handle their own finances, and so on.
Right.
For me to come into such an ecosystem was an advantage, and through that I started my exposure in crypto.
Right.
Okay. Now, as a marketeer, as a person working in a company, I obviously worked around a lot of different products. I tried derivatives, I tried margin trading, I tried lending, and so on and so forth. Various products that even Coin DCX used to offer, and also competition to understand how the markets are.
Right.
But at that point in time, it was more about my job, right? Exploring what's happening.
Right.
Did I put my personal finances back then into crypto? It was not really. But once I started understanding the piece, once I started entering the markets in general, I understood some parts of the markets, how things are working out there.
Right.
And that led me to taking more exposure in some of the large coins. I always believe that investing should be basis thesis. You should have a premise why you are investing somewhere.
Absolutely.
So be it even I use the same thing in crypto also, right? I had a belief in products like Ethereum, or even Cardano, one of the tokens out there,
Right.
and the kind of problems that they were solving. And then I started taking exposure there, right? So moving from just exploring products to now taking active exposure.
Right.
And irrespective of the waves that went through, right? Obviously, there was a big upswing.
Yep.
Then there was a downturn. Because I understood the market, I did take an exit at the right point in time.
Right.
And now again, there is going to be an upswing in the crypto trading space. So I'm going to start taking exposure further, right? So I understand the market movement, but I also understand the thesis behind some of the projects.
Right.
So I do take exposure basis the thesis, but I also play the market and the time so that I'm able to maximize my returns. So basis this something that I started working on. On my portfolio side, I have made a conscious effort. Um, so I just broke it down into upside instruments, downside instruments.
Right.
So there are, so for example, I get this a lot from people saying that real estate perhaps is not a great investment option. You don't make a good return and so on and so forth. Similarly for gold or whatever.
Yeah.
What I understood over a period of time was there were certain things that can give you a great upside. There are certain things that can protect your funds,
Absolutely.
protect your capital. And even though they don't give a great upside, right, they give a upside that is more predictable in nature.
Correct.
Right? So I have split my portfolio accordingly. I have close to 50% of my portfolio in predictable options.
Right.
I wouldn't say fixed income. Like there are, it is spread across, say even things which are linked to markets.
Right.
But they are more predictable.
More predictable.
Right.
Sure.
And they are more in my, I don't know whether that's the terminology, but in my terminology, they're downside protectors.
Sure.
And then the remaining 50% is then split into the way in which I want to make my upside, right?
Right.
So with crypto, I keep it around 1 to 2% because that gives me a big boost to my portfolio.
Right.
Another 10 to 12% is in stocks, and a couple of others in then it is more like an SIP based mutual funds and stuff
Right.
like that. Gives me an option to safely grow my portfolio and also ensure that I'm able to preserve my capital.
Got it.
One thing that I currently don't have an exposure or like other than family jewels, I don't do much of gold. I'm not really sure why I don't do it. But I do feel that's probably something that I need to explore. While doing that, again, there are dematerialized options also available.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring it out. So that's probably the next set of things that I'm going to explore, which is gold, silver, and then perhaps more into commodities.
Commodities. Got it. No, this is amazing, and I love the fact that you spanned across generations worth of assets. Right? You talked about property and gold, which were very traditional in nature. You talked about stocks and bonds, which are sort of the traditional instruments at the moment. And then you talked about crypto and how to allocate crypto into your portfolio, which is amazing. And this is one learning that I think I want to pass on to all our users today is you don't need to be averse to any particular thing.
Yeah.
It's always sort of getting a small piece of a particular pie because that particular piece has a specific role to play in your portfolio. As you rightly said, even if you're an adventurous investor, but let's say you're someone who has a risky job, you do need some amount of downside protection. You do need FDs, you do need bonds, you do need blue chip stocks and ETFs in your portfolio as well. And plus you do need those upside givers as well, which are the ones that help you beat inflation and make money over time. And also, again, a lot of influencers come out and say you should avoid property like the plague, but that is not the reality, right?
Yeah.
That is like in if you look at real life, there is no right or wrong answer. If you do find a good property, it might give you good returns. But where the sort of pitfall comes is when people try to do too much of something and take on too much risk.
True.
Like with the wave of crypto, I think a lot of young people or a lot of people in Gen Z put all their hard-earned savings into crypto. Previously, people used to just put all their money into one property. Those are risky calls, right? And that is one thing that... So the crypto point brings me to one very important piece. Because when this entire crypto wave was going on, you were in Coin DCX. And you would have sort of seen how young people were pouring in a lot of money there and risk management was the problem there. So being on the other side of the fence, being a marketer, how did you see the market dynamics evolve? And did you guys feel any responsibility at your end to protect these young people from these pitfalls as well?
So one thing that was very clear at Coin DCX was that we wanted to say very clear, like I asked Sumit, the founder, right, why are you building this?
Right.
In early 2019, perhaps the second day at my job, I said, why are you doing this?
Right.
And he was very clear. He believed in the blockchain story. He believed in the crypto story. And he said, I want to build a big company.
Right.
Now, big companies could be defined as anything, but he was very clear that I'm here for the long run.
Right.
When you are there for the long run, you cannot be a company that is just taking advantage of a cycle.
Right.
You have to live across multiple cycles. So when that was very clear that we are going to be across cycles, we knew things will go up. There will be a lot of people coming in, and things will go down.
Right.
A lot of people losing out, right? So we had to build some fundamental structures that will help us work across.
Right.
Before we started any marketing or campaigning, we focused a lot on education. In 2020 is when we launched a portal called DCX Learn,
Right.
which was a focused education system for people who wanted to get exposure in crypto. For all that actually ran for almost 1.5 years before our first major marketing campaign.
Interesting.
Right. So the whole idea was, unless we educate, and this is something that we used to believe in while I also used to run an agency, then unless you educate, you're probably not earned the right to sell.
Agreed.
Right. Else, you can just enjoy the wave and lose all the trust. Right.
Right.
So we were very particular that we will have to educate people. We did not want to make it all good and sundry. Right. We worked on a lot of communication. Right. Even if people were inside and buying, investing in crypto, we did send them a lot of messages that be careful, and you can. We always had our public stand very clear. Don't take more than 1 to 5% of your portfolio as an exposure in crypto.
Right.
But yeah, there were cases where people went all in, right? And we had a lot of people coming to us complaining when things went south.
Yeah.
And we had to help them out, right? It was our responsibility. We had acquired them. We had brought them to this journey.
Right.
Having said that, we started a lot of other things, okay, which are not as popular as the campaigns that we ran, right? We even today run or Coin DCX today still runs I think a 40 city-wide chapter. Okay, so there are chapters on the local cities in 40 different cities where you can reach out to the chapter members and understand how to go about investing. Over the last 3 years, they have been doing something that we started, Namaste Web3, kind of an event in smaller cities.
Right.
I think yesterday was the one that happened in Surat. Education with media houses, education with a lot of influencers as well, right? It was important to bring the awareness in the space, right? And it was important that we spend money, do some large campaigns. Else, the wave of crypto was so massive back then that people were easy targets.
Right.
So if we wanted to be that large company, that big company, we had to ensure that we are making a positive commitment. It's not that we just spend money to acquire, but we also spend money to educate. Right? Spend a lot of time in building the Web3 ecosystem in India. Today it is one of the largest Web3 events that happened. I was there back then when we started the first event, when we started associations, when we started conversations with the government, with the regulators.
Right.
I think these are the steps that any good organization should and would take, right, to ensure that people who are getting into crypto are getting through awareness.
Right.
I would say through the best of our efforts, we've been able to probably help a few. There's still a lot to be done.
Yeah.
Still a lot to be done on, and I wouldn't say it's just crypto, right?
Yeah.
Because the nature is not related to the asset. The nature is about making a quick buck.
Quick buck. Exactly.
Right?
Precisely.
Which is what is something that we need to target. It's not crypto. It could be something else tomorrow.
Agreed.
Right?
Totally agreed.
So unless we solve for the core problem, there's a famous dialogue. I don't remember the movie where the dialogue was कि आप बीमार का इलाज करो बीमारी का नहीं.
Right.
Right. So we don't have to do just symptomatic treatments. We have to actually go to the core of it.
Core of it. Yeah.
And that's a tough problem to solve, right? And people who have the courage to face it, I think they are doing some great job.
Right. I love what you said in this entire sort of segment, but specifically on one point that you said, that unless you educate, you don't earn the right to sell.
Yeah.
And we, in fact, at Cashvisory adhere to that philosophy as well, where we do a lot of investor awareness programs. We go to corporates, we go to colleges, just to educate people on the basics that they need to know. And even through our entire product cycle, this is sort of stitched in as part of the ecosystem, because although you might be educating people across the board with blogs, with podcasts like these, people need to know the relevant piece of information at the point when they're traversing the journey.
True.
Right. So that is one effort that we are taking in that step. But you definitely, with your current venture, are targeting this problem head on.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me more about how you're thinking about it in terms of going to the root cause of the problem.
Right. So while education and all, and I think I briefly touched upon it in the past also, the objective is to make them literate, not experts, right? So our intent is to help people decide better. Okay. We are working on creating tools by which they can analyze, they can research. Through our conversations with our consumers, we realized that if someone wants to actively manage their funds, they have to visit at least 10 different portals to understand or take a decision, right?
Absolutely.
So it's very fragmented. We also realize it is very limited in nature. When I say limited, because of the economies built around investing today, a lot of analysis and content is available, but restricted to, say, fewer asset classes, and even in them to fewer places. Like, for example, you get a lot of content around large caps, but when you move to small caps, it is very limited in nature.
Agreed.
Right? And when I say content, I'm talking about actionable, good quality content, right? So our focus is to challenge these two things, right? We also realized when we were talking to people, it felt we go ahead and explain to guys, okay, this is the PE ratio, you have to calculate it like this, like that. And the first question people would ask is, what is PE ratio? Right? Okay, and why should I even bother about knowing it?
Yeah.
And then that's when in our journey we realized that, and we took a parallel with something like designing. Around 15 years back, if you were supposed to design, you had to learn something like an Adobe Illustrator or a Corel Draw.
Right.
If you're one of those fast guys, you probably learn an Inkscape Navigator or whatever.
Right.
But you had to learn how to become a designer, even if you had to do a small design job, right? Else, you would probably make a very shoddy kind of a stuff, or you pay someone for it. Because everyone thought that you have to become a good designer.
Correct.
Right? And that's the approach. The products were built that way, and they were only incrementally developed to make someone better equipped at designing.
Right.
Then came in a player like a Canva. Right? Which said, okay, you don't have to be a designer. You need to get a design.
Yeah.
So that's the approach we are taking, right? We don't want to do things incremental. We don't want to build a better Money Control Pro.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the approach. Money Control Pro is good for their audience.
Absolutely.
Right? But the audience that we are targeting, they don't understand what's happening there. Right?
Yeah.
They don't like the graphs. They don't like the amount of data thrown at them.
Correct.
Right? So we had to figure out how do we solve this. I always say this to my team, right? The IMPS could have been the next UPI.
Yep.
But it always felt it had to become a better NEFT.
Right.
Right?
That's an interesting example.
Right? It never thought that I have to become something like UPI, right? So we are then looking at our solution from that approach.
Right.
We're not trying to build something incrementally better. We're trying to build something which is radically different.
Got it.
Right? And our entire product is built from the consumer lens. So although, see, at the end of the day, we are still talking about core finance.
Yeah.
Like as Canva still does a good design job, the focus is not to turn the guy a designer.
Yeah.
The same way, we are not trying to make people financial experts, but our product should still do the job.
Agreed.
Right? So for us, we work on a lot on analysis. We also realized that investment instruments are also not very structured in nature.
Right.
So if I have to answer a very simple question, which is when I said I'm doing from a consumer lens, consumer question is I have 1 lakh rupees. Where do I do?
Where do I invest?
Now for this natural language question, how do I find an answer?
Right.
We go back to what 25 years or 30 years back, Google did.
Right.
They were able to find an answer, the best answer for a natural language question. So we are trying to standardize stuff on this front, standardize content.
Yep.
To an extent that we are hoping for that one day someone can come and compare, okay, I have 1,000 rupees, if I put in Bitcoin or whether I put in a bond or whether I put in a large cap stock, where do I make more money?
Right.
Someone can do that right now. Obviously we are not there yet, but that's the goal, that's the wish, where someone can search for a question and get an answer, and that answer could be from anyone. Our own analyst, there are multiple analysts out there.
Absolutely.
There are investors who are good at analyzing, even they can answer that question. We have a structure by which these questions can be vetted, verified, a governance system that uses a lot of concepts from blockchain and Web3. So that's where the product is. We're trying to solve this problem. If someone feels that they want to make an investment, how do I help them decide better through content?
Got it. And that makes a lot of sense. And just to sort of build up a bit on that, from a financial advisor's perspective, what we try to do is get the answers to these questions to them, but at the same time, make them realize that this is not, any question cannot be answered in silo. It's more nuanced.
Yes.
So what ends up happening is if someone comes to us with a question, we go back to them with 4 follow-up questions, right? And that is something that we're trying to do on the product side as well. So I think this is something that's important that you're working, and it's not just me or you. It needs to be a wave of people working on this problem together.
True.
And only then will we be able to solve it at scale for all of India. But amazing that both of us are working on this common mission, and I'm sure over time we'll crack it.
And that's the beauty of it, right? Both of us are working on the same problem statement, different approaches.
Exactly.
But that's the beauty of it. We can coexist. And going back to the entrepreneur conversation, right? Many a times people are obsessed with the product. Ideally, good entrepreneurs are obsessed with the problem, right? And if someone wants to start their journey, find a problem that you're obsessed about. And as I said, in this case, both of us are obsessed with the problem.
Right.
There could be multiple ways of solving it, and multiple people can coexist.
Right.
Luckily, we have got a massive market out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a problem that needs to be solved, and something which is close to my heart. I can't fathom that the journey I went through, or the kind of things that people around me are facing.
Yeah.
As a person who can build products, should build a product and solve these problems. These are easy problems to be solved. Easy in the sense, they are problems that need to be solved, and there are solutions that if you put your mind to it, you will be able to find an answer.
Totally agree. Now, I think on that note, we're going to jump to a very interesting segment. And I think the segment or the TG that both of us are trying to solve this problem for are young individuals. Sure. And I think one thing that's happening is attention spans are dropping. So in the context of that, we have this rapid fire round. So rapid questions, rapid answers.
Sure, I hope I do well.
Get your, I'm sure you will. We don't have a hamper for you today, but I'm sure it'll be fun, irrespective. So the first question is tea or coffee?
Tea.
Okay. Fixed deposit or asset leasing?
Fixed deposit.
Okay. Stock or crypto?
Crypto.
Okay. Gold or property?
Property. I have not done gold.
Startup versus corporate job?
At early in life, startups.
Got it. Favorite growth channel that you follow as a marketer?
Content.
Got it. Favorite social media platform?
nowadays I'm using a lot of LinkedIn. So yeah.
Right, got it. Favorite finance book that you would have read? Could be a movie or a podcast as well, apart from Cashvisories, of course.
Interestingly, so I read this book way back in 2010 about. So it was more of a textbook. I wouldn't call it like, it's not a very popular book, but it's a textbook explaining corporate risk management. Right. So trying to understand probability of default, loss given default, exposure at default. The way it was explained and the way the content impacted me, I felt I still feel it's a very good book. I've read a lot of books, seen a lot of other stuff, but I still remember the concepts that were mentioned in that book.
Interesting.
And the way it was explained, and I think a lot of it I still use in my life. So yeah, that's the book.
That's amazing. One app that you can't live without?
I don't know. I would say YouTube today.
YouTube. Okay.
Maybe it was a tough call between Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah.
But I have gone a couple of days without Instagram. But
Right.
I have definitely opened up YouTube to figure out what's happening next.
Got it. And finally, one advice that you would give to your younger self?
Maybe work a bit more harder. That's all I could say. Work harder so that you make lesser mistakes. That's it.
Right. Awesome. That was phenomenal. I think it's a very enriching conversation that we had today, and I'm sure all our listeners will learn something new or the other. So guys, if you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from it. And Ram, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much
pleasure.
for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.